Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning, a live edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the International Diamond Center Studios. Locations across the state of Florida, right there in Celebration Point in the heart of Gator Nation. Go check out the good folks at International Diamond Center. Today's show will have Brent Beaird, our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter. And after that, we will have Kevin Brockway. If you missed it, Alex Condon is coming back. My gut feeling over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think all three are coming back. And I don't know if we'll get the Iowa State sharpshooter or not, but that would be wonderful. I doubt it if all of them come back. So we'll see. We'll talk to Kevin, get his thoughts. Maybe I'm crazy. Let's go to the Titan Mar hotline, and it's our man Brent Beaird. Good morning, Brent. How you doing?
Shane, doing well. Good to be on with you. We are still in the middle of spring football games. And we actually have one more in the conference next week. Arkansas plays not this weekend, but next weekend. And I understand that when you've got a new coach and you're trying to get things together, that makes sense. They've got a 3:00 game next week with Ryan Silverfield getting his debut, shall we say. So, but it's always a good time of spring and a change. It just to see a little bit of the teams, but there are teams that will have no spring game. If you're wondering, Missouri, Ole Miss, LSU, and South Carolina will not have spring games. That's disappointing because I wish I had something for the fans in order to see, but that's kind of where we are with those teams. Everybody else in the conference is either having or have their spring games.
Yeah. And there's been rumors of this the last few years about Mike Leach getting into the College Football Hall of Fame. But there was a winning percentage that he did not reach, but they are changing that.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that. You've got to win at least 60% of your games. Leach won 59.6. That's about as close as you can get, right? The National Football Foundation will lower the winning percentage to 59.5, and that's going to start with the 2027 ballot to address that. Look, not only did Leach do good work on the field, but what he did as far as just the personality and so forth. And again, I'm not saying you let somebody in just because he's got a good personality and he can be funny, but the reality is, Shane, when you're that close to reaching the target of which is basically less than a 1%, I think you let a guy in, especially a guy like Mike Leach.
Agree with that. So the D1 committee is thinking about doing away with red shirts.
Yeah, the problem we got here again is 18-year-olds playing against 25, 26-year-olds, which we've seen a good bit about. So the NCAA is concerned about that, and they are discussing it to give college athletes 5 years of eligibility. Now, that would start when you graduate high school or you turn 19, which is earlier. So they are dealing with this. I haven't come up with a decision about it yet. Now, again, this would eliminate red shirts and just give everybody, again, 5 years of eligibility.
Michael has a pretty good question here, Brent, for you on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. Is the push to eliminate the conference title games as much about compressing the length of the season as it is about eliminating the competitive disadvantage to the participants?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, but I think it's probably more the former than the latter. Now, right now, we have got the championship game for college football is basically the last Monday in January. Now look, I don't think we'll go back to ending the season on January the 1st. I think that would tighten the window too much. But if they ended the season, Shane, the middle of January, that might be a little bit more realistic. But right now, unless something major happens, we're under contract to basically have the championship game around the last Monday of January. So that's what they're trying to eliminate is the season bleeding too much over into 2 semesters instead of just one.
Yeah, I love the championship games. I think they're the best. Well, I should say the SEC championship game is the best sporting event you can attend.
Mm-hmm.
But those 2 teams pretty much know they're going to be in the playoffs.
Yes.
They're just playing for seeding and to be able to get a ring and a banner and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what's going to happen with them. I'm not one. I do think this season is too long, but they have too long of breaks between games.
They do. Yes.
I could care less about the semesters and all that stuff, Brent, because baseball goes through multiple semesters, basketball, because
Sure.
school is irrelevant in today's athletics. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Majority of them
Yeah.
don't go to class. They do stuff online. But there's a way they could shrink the season and get all the games they still want to play in. There's no reason they should have 3 or 4 weeks between games, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. And look, to your point, if you remember, Shane, last year between Georgia's first playoff game and the SEC championship game, Georgia was off a month.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
A month is a long time.
Yeah, there's no reason that should happen. The Pouncey Twins, Mike and Marquise, invite you to try the mango martinis at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, handcrafted with their J.F. Hayden liqueurs. Try those flavors or find your favorite at shopjfhaydens.com. All right, Brent. Alabama, I believe, had their spring game. What can you tell us went on there?
They did. That they were, I think, pleased with the game, and they've got an interesting amount of talent coming back. Cedric Morgan, 6'4", 224. He's a freshman wide receiver, wearing Julio Jones on number 8, if you remember that. He's one of the guys who has stood out for them. I think the guy that has drawn the most attention is, and he is basically a freshman, Keelan Russell. He played a lot in the spring game. Austin Mack is in Russell, or no one's been decided yet as far as who the leader is, but they're both pretty good quarterback. Austin Mack came over with Kalen DeBoer from Washington, so he has played more. But Russell is a really good player. The only difficult thing that really kind of happened as far as bad news is concerned, Noah Rogers, who is a transfer out of NC State, had a leg injury that's going to put him out through about half the season. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end up redshirting him at this point. So pretty good spring for Alabama. I think everybody knows the pressure on Kalen DeBoer. I mean, he's 20-8 in a couple of seasons, which is not bad. But Shane, as you know, when you're in the SEC, fans want more than 20-8 on the after 2 years.
Yeah. John says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Meldon Law, if the Gators get all 3 back plus Milan, go ahead and book your Final Four tickets now. If all 3 come back, Biggs, we're talking about, I'm not sure we have enough money to pay for the sharpshooter, but we might. I don't know. I've been talking about that kid for the whole season because I watch a lot of college basketball. There's no better shooter in America than him. Amy's question for you, Brent, on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mello. Do you think there will be many more tampering penalties like we saw at Iowa coming from the NCAA?
Possibly. And again, that was an interesting situation in that, I mean, what actually, the problem here is what actually happened in the tampering penalty happened like in, Shane was like 2022 or 23, something like that, and they didn't really get around to dealing with it. So I think people's problem with it was, why does it take so long to get these cases settled in the penalty given out and taken, and probably even more so than what actually happened. I mean, Iowa, they admitted it and they dealt with it themselves, but that was a problem I think the people had in that situation, was how long it takes just to get something done when you're penalized.
Correct. You mentioned Arkansas has their spring game, but this weekend or next weekend, I should say. The Auburn Tigers, though, they're going to tee it up, I believe, Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Alex Golesh is the new coach, and he brings obviously a lot of players with him from USF, including his quarterback. That is a 3 p.m. game and we've got several teams who are playing on Saturday after kind of beginning last Saturday. And again, we mentioned this earlier, if someone just is tuning in, if you're an Arkansas fan, that game is next week. It's not tomorrow, or in 2 days. So, but when you have a new coaching staff, sometimes you just need some more time, and I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, the Gators had their spring game. We've talked about it quite a bit. Brent, got anything else you want to add to stuff coming out of Gainesville?
Well, I mean, just really excited about hearing what is going on at Gainesville, and that it seemed like they had a very good spring all the way around. I mean, they've got, I think, good quarterbacks, and Philo and Jones, who obviously is from our area here. A lot of guys raising up. Singleton did well as a receiver. And this Will Griffin kid, 13 of 17 for 75 yards. Look, he may not play a lot, but you're glad to be able to see that. And when you really kind of look at what Florida's got, with Jaden Brown, and Vernell Brown, and Jaden Woods, running back, wide receiver, edge rusher. We mentioned Singleton that they've added. Bailey Stockton at wide receiver. Micah May's name's been mentioned a good bit. So I would say all the way around, Shane, it was a pretty good spring in Gainesville for year one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Georgia, what's going on with the Dogs?
Yeah, Georgia also coming up with spring game this weekend. Isaiah Cannon from Georgia Tech's wide receiver. Jamarly Riddle is a safety from East Carolina. So they've got some pretty key additions. Last year, people may forget this, Georgia was the second youngest team in the SEC, but they still made it the playoffs and did well. Outside linebacker Marius Williams is out for the year. Unfortunately, tore his ACL, I believe it was on Tuesday of this week during practice. He is an Auburn transfer. I mean, Georgia can replace him and they'll be okay, but it's tough when you lose a guy in spring practice as they did. 17 starters coming back for the Bulldogs, expected again to be in the playoffs.
What about the LSU Tigers?
Yeah, that's been an interesting situation too. They did not have a spring game, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, but they've got some guys who certainly have played well. Sam Levitt is going to be the quarterback, but as most people know, he is out with an injury. He'll be back for fall practice, and he should be fine. Some other transfers: Jace Brown from Kansas State, Eugene Wilson, that name, it should be familiar, coming over. as wide receiver, Jordan Ross, the defensive end. I know these are names that people probably don't know yet, but they will. Reportedly a $40 million roster for Lane with that. So, but it's gonna be very important to be able to get their quarterback back and him be ready and go. And he'll be okay and they'll be okay. They may end up having, and Kiffin said this, that they have to depend on their defense a little bit until their offense gets up and going.
Rose Ogre State Farm offers a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visitogreinsurance.com. Give them a call, 352-240-1779. We got Brent Beaird talking college football. Kanye Ron on YouTube, brought to you by Quiet Plumbing, says, what are the fans' reactions at these schools that don't do a spring game? They probably don't care. I don't really know if they do or not. But
that's a good question. I mean, I think fans would like to be able to go to the game and see it, but we're seeing fewer and fewer spring games. Now, that there's also some talk, and Shane, you can help us with this, that schools may end up going soon to OTAs, which instead of having just a concise period of time where you're doing spring practice, you're practicing for a week or two, 1 month, a week or two the next month, and spreading it out a little bit. I'm curious if you've heard that and what you think about that coming from the NFL. It is more of an NFL style, but we are hearing more and more of that, Shane. Is if spring practice changes, that may be what they do.
Yeah, I think eventually spring games will be done. All it is another practice. There's no blitzing. It's just basic football. It's just for the fans, but I think they're going to get rid of it eventually and just practice year round. And like you said, with these OTAs, these different mandatory practices that they can have. But I know fans like to go. I think the beauty about the spring game is free. And so it's
yes.
More, when people can't bring their young kids to a regular game, they get the game experience. The problem we had this year was we had nothing else going on campus. Usually you got a baseball game, softball game, tennis or something going on, but there was nothing. And I said the one thing that I have an issue with Coach Summerall since he's become our head coach is, and I don't think he had anything to do with it, but I said it on the air. Why do we schedule a game on Masters weekend? That's a bad idea.
Yeah. That's a good point too. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And now, if we have a change in spring football, it's going to be this: is that you actually play another team. Now, I don't think coaches would be crazy about that, frankly, and really want to do it. But you remember Deion Sanders really wanted to do that with Colorado. Here's what's key, and I'll be brief on this, is the NCAA told him that they would not do it this year because they didn't have enough time to get it implemented. And I don't know what kind of information the NCAA needs in order to get that done. So I'm with Shane. They're either going to probably get rid of spring games altogether, or they will allow spring games between two teams, which would probably give them a little bit more interest in what they've got now.
Right. But the downside and the negative portion of that is the expense of traveling. And I don't know if anybody, even if Florida wanted UCF to come play them, you're going to have to pay for their busing, hotel stay. I mean, I just think there's too much money involved in the traveling aspect, and they're going to save that money to pay players.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, absolutely.
What's going on with Tennessee? They get picked a quarterback yet?
Yeah, they are still trying to they're still trying to figure that out as to where that is going. George McIntyre and Faison Brandon are the guys who are likely to replace Joey Aguilar. Remember Joey Aguilar that tried to get another year of eligibility, and that was turned down. They've also got Ryan Staub, who's a Colorado transfer, to come in. They've got Chaz Coleman, who's a Penn State transfer. the number one edge rusher, but he didn't play during the spring, had some personal issues. So they're hoping to get that straightened out. Also, and again, Shane can let us know more about what it's like to break in a new quarterback. The big thing at Tennessee, obviously, is Jim Knowles. Jim Knowles was at Ohio State, then he was at Penn State. He's one of the better defensive coordinators anywhere, and Tennessee has struggled lately defensively, so they made that change. So, Shane, what you may see early on is Tennessee winning games on the defensive side of the ball, maybe even more than offense.
Yes, for sure. Kanye Ron says on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing, NFL does scrimmaging versus other teams. Basketball has those secret scrimmages versus other. True. But the NFL, when they do that, usually they practice against one another for 2 days and then they play an actual preseason game. Basketball, they'll travel to Orlando or somewhere and play, but the expenses are not what a football team costs to travel. I just don't think there's any way that happens. It's a great, I would love for that to happen. It'd be fun to have spring games against other teams, but costs way too much. Brent, what's going on with, you got anything on Texas or Texas A&M?
Yeah.
I still think Texas is going to be the number one team in America when it's all said and done, when the polls come out.
Yeah, I would agree. And Arch Manning coming back will be a lot of that. Now, Texas has had some key additions. They've gotten some stars. They've got wide receiver Cam Coleman out of Auburn, Hollywood Smothers at NC State. He was either going to Alabama or Texas and ended up at Texas. This is a big year for Texas. And I'm with Shane on this one. There are a lot of people who think that Texas could be preseason number one. Now their spring game is Saturday with the time to be announced. They probably got all that figured out by now. A&M also has their spring game. It's going to be at 2:00 too. They added Isaiah Horton from Alabama, wide receiver Wilkin Formby also from Alabama. They also got Angelo McCullum from Illinois. Aggies had a good year last year, hoping to build on that. Marcel Reed, Shane, coming back at quarterback, so that will be interesting.
Very, very true. John says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law. Brent, I'm curious if you saw the Colorado spring game. They looked really small, like a high school team.
Listen, Deion's got a lot of criticism about that. I mean, he shot back with it, but that was one of the things that people talked about was how small they were. I mean, you sort of don't want to be small in the line of scrimmage, so that's going to be interesting, frankly, to see where that goes. And a quick question on that, Shane. Are you surprised he stayed there? Now, I mean, he hadn't been there forever, but, some people think, any year he's going to leave, but he's sticking it out. He's had, his own medical issues and so forth. But I think that is a good point. A lot of people have talked about that, and that'll be interesting to see how he deals with that in the off season.
Yeah, I don't see Deion getting another head job in college football. I think he's fortunate to be in Colorado personally. But time will tell. Tom says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Melton Law, Alabama just had a scrimmage. They didn't have an actual spring game. Well, neither did we, Tom. I don't think anybody does. Ours is a scrimmage. Brent, give us some nuggets before we get you out of here.
Yeah, glad to do that. Florida State did not have a spring game. A lot of people were disappointed in that, but they did not. Some of the players who did well, Desario Riles at tight end. These are some names that may be familiar, that may not be. Andre Otto and Paul Bowling on the offensive line seemed to do well. Also, Chris Jones, Blake Nicholson, and Omar Graham. Those guys at linebacker did the same. So just wanted to mention a few names for FSU. Again, remember, FSU plays New Mexico State on the first weekend of the year. So in the week 0 type situation, Miami has their spring game this Saturday at 10 o'clock. Again, they've lost a lot of their offensive line. They'll have to rebuild that. Darian Mensah from Duke is going to be the quarterback, so he will come in. Most everybody knows Carson Beck is leaving. Miami projected, Shane, and I'm sure you've seen this, to win at least 10 games this year. They've had a lot of losses, but they seem to be rebuilding, so that's going to be interesting. So again, several spring games this weekend. Arkansas is next week, so we will keep our eye on as much of it as we can.
It'll be interesting to see if Miami can win their first ACC football title. I don't think they have one.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, very much.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Brent, good stuff as always. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next week, bud.
Good. Look forward to it, pal. Take care.
Yep, that's Brent Beaird. Join us on the Titan Amore Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. This Day in Sports brought to you by Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's #1 choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte and surrounding areas. Go check them out at peachlanddental.com. In 2019, 7 years ago, Seattle Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson became the highest paid player in NFL history with a 4-year, $140 million extension and a $65 million signing bonus. And people have surpassed that now, and he's not even a starting quarterback in the league. Crazy, crazy, crazy. We'll take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll be joined by Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun, get his thoughts on what's going on with Gator basketball, get his thoughts on the spring game, and any other questions and comments that you may have. You're watching and listening to PodUp and Matthews in the Morning from the International Diamond Center Studios. We'll be right back.
Our premium sponsors are Atlantic Roofing, Campus USA Credit Union, International Diamond Center, J.F. Hayden's Craft Liqueurs, Los Landeros Tequila, Meldon Law, Titan MRI and Imaging, Castaway Sauce, UF Health Orthopedics, Michael Schneider PLLC, Florida Legends Gala and Experience, Money Metals, Sensei Asian Bistro. Our gridiron sponsors are Baker Sports, Florida Cracker Oyster, Gallo Car Wash, Miapa Latin Cafe, Peachland Dental, Quality Plumbing, Rue's Ogre State Farm, Silverback Concrete, 84 Lumber, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Florida Cracker Kitchen, Gator Dominoes, Ironwood Golf Course, McDonald's of Gainesville, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, UF Bookstores, International Gold and Diamond, Advocare, and MGA&A Wealth. Watch and listen to us live on Facebook or YouTube. Listen to podcasts wherever, on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And to advertise, be sure to call my man Freddie at 352-284-3733.
Recent price spikes in groceries, healthcare, gasoline, steel, and lumber tell the story of inflation. As the reality of all this inflation sinks in, investors will be acting quickly to diversify and protect themselves, their families, and their assets. Low transaction costs are one reason Investopedia calls Money Metals the best dealer in America. Don't waste any more time. Start protecting your savings today with physical precious metals at moneymetals.com/go.
To the swamp and the Gators, with the best beverage served at Spur's Gridiron Grill, 100% agave Los Landeros Tequila, aged in bourbon barrels for a smoother taste.
I think you mean Head Beer Coach 1966 lager, a crisp, light, bodied lager for easy drinking.
Nope. Los Landeros Tequila, smooth enough to drink neat and bold enough to elevate a cocktail.
1966 lager, enjoyed on game days in the fall or whenever you need a winning cold brew. Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
By now, you heard about the Florida Legends Experience in Gala, featuring Gator Heisman greats Tim Tebow, Danny Warfel, and Steve Spurrier, all in one place at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. Imagine catching a pass or taking a handoff from a Heisman winner, all while supporting Isaiah 117 to help provide safe, loving homes for children in need. Then enjoy an unforgettable evening at the Gala, filled with great food and lasting memories. Don't miss this historic event. Find out how you and your business can get involved at fllegends.com. That's fllegends.com.
Welcome back to the International Diamond Center Studios. UF grad Michael Schneider, a real estate attorney, can help you save thousands of dollars in real estate commissions by helping you sell your home or land by owner without a broker. Michael Schneider PLLC serves the entire state of Florida. Contact Michael at maschneiderpllc.com. Before we get to Kevin Brockway, I want to give a shout out to Graham Hall for taking care of the program yesterday. We missed our Peachland Dental picks, but here they are. Since the tournament has started, JC went with Russell Henley, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander, and Gary Woodland. I have Minwoo Lee, Akshay, Brian Harmon, and Maverick McNeely. All right, let's get to the Titan No More Hotline. We're talking with Gainesville Suns, Kevin Brockway. What's up, Kevin?
Good morning. How are you, Shane?
All right, Kevin, let's start with basketball. Alex Connon is coming back. We all think Ruben will be coming back as well. I've just had a gut feeling for the last month that I thought Thomas Houck was coming back. I don't know if he is or not. Are we getting the sharpshooter from Iowa State?
Well, I think if Tommy doesn't come back, I think that's the direction they turn. By the way, I looked up the pronunciation of his name. It's Milan Momcilovic.
Yeah.
I was practicing that all morning. 48% from three.
Oh.
I mean, pretty impressive. A Big 12 record, unbelievable sharpshooter, and 6'8" to boot. So big kid. You could play him on the wing, and he could probably match up with a lot of guys. He doesn't have the same rebounding ability as Thomas, but could bring it in a lot of other ways. So a very skilled guy, and a guy that would fit with what Todd's trying to do. I mean, it looks to me like, especially, if they get Momcilovic with Denzel Aberdeen, that Todd's been going after the 3-point shooting in the offseason because, Denzel is another guy too. That's a perimeter upgrade from Xavier Lee. So, you get those two guys in and you go with, more firepower from the perimeter, which is what they were missing last year, which certainly cost them in a lot of games.
So do you think if they do bring back the three bigs from last year, they still have an opportunity to get Milan?
I don't know, because I think what would happen then would be, certainly Kansas and North Carolina are in the mix, and they're like, look, we can give you a starting spot. Whereas I think for Florida, like, where are you going to play him? Well, maybe you could play him at the 2 at 6'8", but then you knock Denzel down. I mean, it would be interesting. It would be an interesting sell job, but it would certainly, I think, create some, doubts as to, how all those pieces would fit together and what kind of role he would have.
Well, I can tell you right now, if you had those three bigs, Boogie at the point and Milan at the 2, that would be the ideal lineup.
I don't know if Milan at the 2, though.
I don't give a damn. He can shoot.
Would he be able to match up defensively, though?
We can figure it out.
All right.
But all right, so we got a text here on the Titan No More text line from Jimmy. Jimmy wants to know, Kevin, what are your thoughts on the chances of Tommy coming back?
I mean, I think they're better now because I think Tommy's draft stock kind of slipped late in the season, and who knows, obviously with the calf and where he was at the end of the year, but he's still in the 15 to 16 range. But I think I was on another podcast. I mean, that's still guaranteed $3 to $4 million year money for 2 years if you end up being picked in the 10 to 20 range. So Florida is going to have to come up with an NL package that's commensurate to that to convince him to stay. So I think that's what you're looking at. And, can they do it? We'll see. I mean, do you take a little less money and maybe bet on yourself to be a higher lottery pick next year? You could do that. Of course, there's the risk of injury, or there's also the risk of you not playing as well the following season. There's a lot into play here, and I'm sure that's what Tommy and his agent are probably weighing.
All right, so text here from Monty on the Titan Mart text line. Just his opinion, but Coach Golden should commit to a 10-man rotation this coming year. Otherwise, he risks losing some very talented bench players like Ingram and Lloyd to the portal. That's today's college basketball, right?
Yeah, I mean, 10 is, I mean, 9 is ideal, I think. Last year they went with 8 and maybe it wore them down a little bit. Their championship year, they were 9. I think 9 is a good number in terms of rotation. And you could fit that all in. And listen, if you want to wait, you want to wait. If not, then, I think that's the thing. I thought Isaiah Brown is a guy I thought was on the come a little bit, but it looks like with these moves, he's going to have to wait. And you've got Klavshar, who, I thought was going to jump into a starting role, but with Aberdeen coming in and, maybe Milan coming in, then you would see him as a 6-man again next year.
Yeah. Don't they have a sharpshooter, another European kid coming in or no?
Not that I'm aware of
Okay.
at this point, but I do know that they were talking about maybe a Serbian big guy. And then, of course, you have Jones Lay, who is coming in, the 7-footer as a true freshman. You lose Micah, but I think that, you've got, him coming in next year as a big off the bench. Victor Micic is sticking around, it looks like. So you've got him coming off the bench too. But if Ruben comes back, I think they'll be with Condon, they'll be pretty well set in the front court.
Yeah. I think John's confused here on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plum. He says, if he comes, is there going to be any altercations in practice with Condon? This is the player from Iowa State.
Yes.
Iowa. This kid is 1,000 times better than the Iowa player. 1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, it's almost like a layup every time he shoots a 3-pointer. I watched
he is a prolific 3-point shooter, and he'll give you a ton of firepower from the perimeter. Heck of a shooter, and a crafty, like a pretty well-rounded player too.
Yeah, very good basketball player. Atlantic Roofing, your roofing experts for residential, commercial roofing with more than 50 years of local experience. I saved a text here. Let me find it real quick, Kevin. This is from Rick on the Titan Mart text line. He says Napier said, switching gears a little bit here. Napier said he inherited a bad culture and that injuries hurt his results, which sounded like a jab at Mullen. Do you agree? And how real is quote, team culture? In South Florida, we hear about the Miami Heat's culture. Do you think team culture is a big thing? Also in year 4, when is it your team culture?
Exactly. And I think it's a chicken and an egg argument. And I think what happens is, players are going to run through a wall for you if you put them in positions to be successful. If you get it's kind of a chicken and an egg argument. I've always thought, that's kind of it. Look, he probably did inherit a bad culture from Dan. But who else didn't inherit a very good culture or very good was Kurt Signetti, and it took him 2 years to turn it around, 1 year to get to the college football playoff. So listen, this whole thing, by year 4, you should have it figured out. And I think Billy did, bring in some class guys. But I think there's a balance to that too, right? Because what's the first thing John Summerall is saying about this team? They're soft, right?
Very soft.
So I think there's a balance between, finding guys with an edge and finding guys that are going to be good citizens. And it's a tricky balance, I think, but you've got to find it because football is an aggressive game and it is a game of contact. So it's like I said, it's very tricky. And look, a lot of SEC programs, they have a Bible Belt mentality about football. I get it. They want their players to represent the school well. But you got to have some dogs in there too. You got some guys that are at least dogs on the field, and you work on it off the field. I think that's kind of the mantra. And I think for Billy, certainly, listen, Billy did not put these guys in positions to be successful. So it was easy for them to lose confidence, to get frustrated, and maybe for there not to be the buy-in. And you got to get the buy-in. Listen, and I thought it was turning a little bit at the end of year 3 when they had the winning streak, and I know it was only the Gasparilla Bowl, but they also beat LSU and Ole Miss, and then, I mean, the USF loss to me, just totally, basically doomed his fate.
Ted's question on Facebook Live brought to you by Melton Law. Where is Ollie going to land?
That's a good question. I got duped by some parody account saying that he wanted 3 million, which I think was I don't I don't know where that came from, and I was like, this is a complete joke, and it turned out it was a joke. No, I think that lower level Division 1, Division 2. I mean, he would serve himself well. Listen, I had heard that him coming out of IMG that UC Irvine was like interested in him, so that's like Big West, like that level of basketball. ASUN, somewhere where he can play a little bit more and play through his mistakes and kind of learn some things. And, we saw that he had the issues getting up and down the floor, which at a program like Florida, your bigs need to run in order for the offense to be successful at Florida. So he's got to go a place, maybe a slow down place might work better for him, and a place at a lower D1 level or maybe even D2.
Joseph on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law, says it helps that our single biggest booster is a diehard basketball fan. Wouldn't be surprised if our basketball NIL is the biggest in the country sooner or later. Well, if you get, even if we're just getting Ruben and Alex to come back, and I mean, they're going to have to spend a lot of money. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
A lot. So.
Last year they were in the 12 to $15 million range. This year they could be in the $15 to $20 million range. That being said, Louisville just reportedly got Flory Badinga for $5 million a year. So, and Kentucky, don't forget, they spent $22 million last year. So they're still not in the big boy blue blood club yet, but they're getting there. I mean, they're up there. But again, this speaks to, again, I think with NIL and money, you're going to back a winner, and Todd has proven to be a winner. Yes. So people are going to back a winner, and that's the whole thing. And the chicken, and they will back John Summerall if he wins. But I think there was a lot of donor fatigue at the end of the previous era under Napier, which may have impacted some things. But you've got to, you got to win in order for them to, Tammy Reese faces that challenge too with women's basketball.
All right, let's switch gears. Just give me your thoughts. The spring game or spring scrimmage, I should call it.
Slow start, a little better in the second quarter, obviously with some of the big plays. Buster even admitted, right, he didn't show much in that game. Most disappointing thing to me was very early in the game, short yardage, 4th and 1, you got Jaden Ball, you can't convert. So that speaks to the offensive line, which I think certainly John Summerall, addressed following the game, saying that they better have a great offseason or we're not going to have a freaking chance. And they're trying to mix and match a lot. You saw the Stanford transfer, right? Ugorji was starting at left tackle in the first offensive series. So, I think that's going to remain a big work in progress. And I know a lot of people, think very highly of Phil Troutwine, and he's a former Gator, but he's got his hands full. And I mean, I think that's the one area where if they had to do over again, they could have addressed a little better in the transfer portal. But like what you see from the defensive line, secondary made some plays, the safeties, obviously with the interceptions, but then also man coverage and corners, you have to be a little concerned about. So all in all, kind of a mixed bag. And then, the Philo Trammell, right? Trammell may have outplayed him slightly in the game, but I still think Philo knows the offense a little better and at times is probably better than Trammell in camp too. So I still think that goes in 50-50 and maybe Philo with a slight edge. I know that's what fans don't want to hear, but that's kind of what we're hearing based on some of the scrimmages that weren't seen. Let's put it that way.
Right. Yeah. I think too many people look. I like both quarterbacks. I like Trammell last year. I like Philo. I like them both. I think they both can run the offense. I thought they looked very composed, knew where to go with the football. They were accurate, had good fundamentals. I'm really not worried about the quarterback position, and I just think fans need to trust their coaches. Everybody is all on the John Summerall wagon. Trust him. Trust Buster Faulkner that they're going to put the best player to help the Gators win. I don't know who that's going to be, but I'll be ready to support them either way. But I think people get too enamored with what they saw in that hour and 45-minute deal. But thought both of them did some good things. So
people don't realize too that like coaches have bonuses and contracts, right? Like they're, for performance, they're not going to not play the best guys because of some conspiracy or because they're buddy with someone. It's, they're going to play who they think are the best guys.
It's a result-driven business. If you don't win and you attach yourself, and this is, I firmly believe this in coaching. If you attach yourself to a certain quarterback, and that you do not produce and win games, you're going to get fired. That position is just way too important.
I think we saw that last year, right?
Yes. MSRK says Spurrier always had two QBs hot hand plays. That's not true. Coach had a lot of quarterbacks on his roster because guys weren't transferring and all that. You had to wait your turn. But they think back to the Doug Noah, right? I think Jesse and Rex may have played a little bit, shared some time, but he did not want to do that. He wanted one guy, but sometimes if the other guy was struggling, he would put him in. And I agree with that philosophy for sure. Real quick, Monty wants on the Titan More text line, Kevin, can you talk about women's basketball? It seems like the new coach is off to a difficult start with all her best players leaving.
Well, I think that's to be expected. That's transition. That's going to happen in any, I don't think that Tammy Reese was going to convince those three players to stay based on the fact that they were very loyal to Kelly Ray Finley. They were probably upset with what happened with her, even though it was probably justified. So I think you probably knew coming in that those three players were going to go. Now, she got the girl from Butler, right? Mallory Miller. She got a girl from her school, Rhode Island. So I think it's going to take time, but she is going to get players that fit her system and that she's going to build around that. And you just, you just have to trust that she's going to coach them up. I mean, McDonald's All-Americans, you can say what you want, but what's been proven in both men's and women's basketball is that you can get transfers, you can turn it right away. You get old and you stay old. That seems to work better than developing through the high school ranks. Because Van Chancellor was talking about this last year. He said, when Texas beat Florida by 20, this is a tough league to be young in, So maybe going older is the route and getting some proven players, rather than building up through the high school ranks.
Back to basketball. Somebody asked, I can't find, I don't know what it was, either on YouTube, Facebook, text, or whatever. Were you surprised that Denzel came back? Will he get that year back? And then my question for you is, who signed Wilkerson? Were we and how serious were we with him, the guard from Georgia?
I don't know how serious we were with they were with Wilkerson, and with Denzel, it's so crazy because I didn't think at first he was going to get to fifth year, but it seems like the NCAA is back to giving out fifth year like candy. And, there's this proposal on the table for 5 years anyway. So I think people are going to turn to that. Look, this has become, exactly. I think people challenge this in court because it has sadly become, if you don't give someone a fifth year, you're taking away their right to earn a living, right? Because this is where we are in college sports. So people are going to challenge it constantly. And it's going to be up to, that side to decide. So I think the NCAA has been a lot more lenient on the 5 year guys. And I know the drum is sounding from Greg Sankey, right? This is taking away opportunities for high school kids. But I do think that, it seems like, there's more opportunities now for people to get fifth years, regardless of how many games or how many minutes they play as a freshman. So.
Yeah, you're going to see so many of these basketball players, football players too.
Yeah.
Everybody's goal is to be a NBA player, NFL player. The percentages are against every one of them. So if you can make $3 to $5 million in college, you better stay as long as you can.
Exactly. And it's probably good for the sport in terms of the fact that you're getting team continuity and, teams staying together a little bit longer because players are staying longer.
Yeah. I know people understand, but it is so hard for these guys to make NBA rosters, first of all. These small rosters, majority of them end up playing in the G League or overseas. And so anyway.
Wilkerson is going to Arkansas, by the way.
That's right, Arkansas. And then
he's going to be with California.
Kentucky signed the kid named Zoom out of Washington. I wonder what they gave him on the point guard.
I mean, they're, like I said, the SEC, it's going to be interesting, that like a lot of these programs have money to spend, but roster construction plays a big role, as we saw with Todd, certainly in what he did with the national championship team and even this past year. But I think that, you got to coach him up too. But you got to give Calipari credit. He has recovered nicely at Arkansas, 2 straight Sweet 16s and SEC tournament championship. He seems to have that program on the rise, and they've got plenty of money out there, with Rogers and Tyson Chicken and Walmart, so they're going to get behind him.
You know what's interesting? I saw a thing on Twitter. I meant to screenshot it, but it was Boogie Flan against all the top guards that he guarded throughout the year, and statistically, their stats were terrible. I mean, he is an elite defender.
He is, yes, he is, and he gives you that. And I know people will knock him on the shooting and occasionally on the turnovers. I had a friend of mine like last December saying he might be the worst point guard ever at Florida and stuff. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, let's give this guy a little bit of breathing room. And, Mike Miller said something when I talked to him in January. He was like, look, this kid's coming into a new system. He's coming into, you got to give him a little bit of room to grow, Mike being Boogie's agent. And I thought in January and February, he really flourished and led the charge to them being, a much better defensive team that won the SEC regular season title.
Yeah. All right. Before we get you out of here real quick, baseball, Gator baseball. I mean,
hard to figure.
I mean, they basically play really well against highly ranked teams, and then they're going to lose to teams they should not lose to. Any concerns losing to Bethune-Cookman in these midweek games? I mean, I've never been a fan of the midweek games. I really didn't care, but you still can't lose to Bethune-Cookman.
Yeah, I think what it speaks to is the pitching depth, obviously, which hasn't been there the last few years under Sully for whatever reason. Maybe NIL plays into a factor with that, but it seems like the deeper you go into the bullpen with this team, the more question marks you have, and that will show up in a regional if you lose early. But if you have it seems like they found their 3 frontline starters, King, Peterson, and Sandifer. But you better hope that you get through those series just having to use those 3 starters. Because if we go any deeper than that, I don't know. Like Cooper Walls looked good in the beginning of the year. He's starting to struggle now because he lost his Sunday spot. So, it's like who else do you really have? And the bullpen. I mean, you got McNeely back there, and you got Ridnour, and Lugo Conchola has been a nice story, but yeah, the pitching depth in general, I think, and the defense too. You still have guys playing out of position. I'm still not sold on Lawson being, the next Ozzie Smith at shortstop. So I think that's an issue too. So those are some concerns, but I do think I've always loved Aiden King. I think he's a bulldog. I think Sully did the right thing making him a Friday starter. And the lineup is starting to hit a little bit again, so I think that's a good sign.
Well, we're not throwing our aces, but neither is Bethune-Cookman, right?
Exactly, and I think that's the thing that you gotta be concerned about as well. Is that for some reason some of these midweek games they tend to let up a little bit, and when you get into the but listen, it's not just Florida. I mean, Bethune-Cookman beat LSU in a midweek series, so. And High Point is actually having a pretty good year. So some of these non-conference teams that they're playing have been doing well. But again, this is a team that's 5-0 against FSU and Florida, Miami, and 1 in. I keep on getting back to that 1-4 against Ole Miss and Alabama. So it's kind of still a hard team to figure from that respect. And they do have a bunch of quad 1 wins, which will work in their favor. Hosting at least a regional, if not maybe a super, but I think they're going to have to finish strong to be at home, both weekends and in the SEC.
Yeah, they're I think 5-1 against Georgia and Arkansas, who are highly ranked. So very, very strange team to figure out. Kevin, good stuff as always. Let everybody know how they can follow you on Twitter.
Yeah, Gainesville.com, Gatorsports.com, and at Kevin Brockway G1. Thank you, Shane.
Appreciate your time, my man. That's Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Join us on the Titan More Hotline. Gallo Car Wash is locally owned by UF alum and the only car wash that provides NIL opportunities to Gator athletes. Locations on Northwest 13th Street, Williston Road, and coming soon to Jonesville and the city of Alachua. Again, thanks to Kevin and Brent Beaird. We'll be here tomorrow, folks. Have a great day. See you then.